Hi and welcome to another video by Jim the Car Guy. Today we have a 2008, it's the Infiniti, the FX35, and we're going to be replacing the left front hub bearing. And the reason we're going to be changing the bearing is because the customer came in and said to me, change the left front hub bearing. So we are going to be replacing it. Honestly, I did drive and I do hear a rumbling noise coming from the left side, but the customer did request it to be replaced. So I am going to be changing it. The customer actually elected to go with the OEM part right from the dealer, which is a good call on this vehicle. So you know, we are going to replace the entire assembly. It's really not a hard job. I'm going to bring you up front. I'm going to show you what to do step by step, and we're going to get this job wrapped up and out the door. Basically what we're going to do is we're going to remove the nut off the front right here. We have to unbolt the back of the bearing here, and we do have to remove the brakes from it. So let me bring you up there. I'm going to show you what to do. Let's get started. Okay, now obviously this is the front of the car. This is the left front. What we're going to do first is we're going to remove the brakes itself. We are going to take off the bolt in the back right over here. And we're going to also remove the other bolt down underneath here. And we're going to remove the mounting bracket, which you can see right up underneath here. That bolt right there, we're going to take that bolt out there. And there's another one up top. And we're going to relocate the caliper off to the side. We're going to support it with a hanger right up in here so it's not dangling by itself. We're going to take this off also, the mounting bracket. And we are going to be changing the brakes on this particular vehicle too, so we are going to be replacing the brakes at the same exact time. All right, next thing we're going to do is we're going to come down in here. We're going to remove this cable right down here for the ABS so we don't damage it when we take that bearing assembly out. And then we're going to remove the bolts in the back to hold the bearing to the vehicle itself. And last but not least, we're going to come up in the front right here, and we're going to disconnect we're going to take this cotter pin out, and we're going to air gun this bolt out as well. So enough talking, let me get the tools, and let's get this job done. Okay, I hope you can see that okay. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to pry these pistons in just a little bit, and you get in here with the pry bar and you just push on a little bit to get these pistons to push back in on the caliper. By doing this, we'll push the piston all the way back in, and we'll be able to check the slide pins at the same time to make sure the slide pins are actually not rusted and causing it to prematurely wear down the brake pads. The way you do that is you push these pistons here back in, and then you just grab the caliper, slide it back and forth, and it should slide back and forth, which it does. We just have to grease it up because it is a little bit rusty. Next thing we're going to do is going to take out those bolts that hold the caliper, in place. Just so you know, they're probably 16 or 17 millimeters actually. And break them bolt loose. And we can take them out by hand. Now if you're taking it out, and this piece here is spinning, obviously just hold it with your hand, and we'll take it out like this. Same thing up on the top, exact same thing. Now don't lose these bolts because you are going to need to put these back in there. We'll put them off to the side for now. One thing you never want to do is you never want to let a caliper hang by its hose. So you take a piece of wire like this and just secure it up and out of the way. All right, next thing we're going to do is we're going to remove the inner, the bolts on the inside that actually hold the mounting bracket onto the vehicle. Those are actually 19 millimeter, just so you know. extremely tight, so we're going to use a breaker bar. And the breaker bar is basically just going to increase your leverage so you can break these loose. I will add in here that this vehicle is extremely rusty, which is a contributing factor for why they're so tight. I'll take the mounting bracket off for now. Just relocate that off to the side. And now we're going to take the rotor off. Now sometimes these rotors are a pain in the rear end and they're really rusty on there. You could bang it in the back here to try to knock it off. It doesn't really matter because we're going to be replacing the rotor anyway. So let's tap it a couple times and let's see what happens. Not that bad. Alright, so we'll take this off now. Alright, next thing we're going to do, I don't know if you can see it in here, but there's actually bolts in the back over here. They're probably 18 millimeter. We're going to take those 18 millimeter bolts out for the hub bearing assembly. But before we do that, we're going to do something else. Let me bring you up there and I'll get you a better view. Okay, let's continue now. First thing we're going to do is we're going to come in the back over here. Remember that ABS sensor we talked about right here? We're going to take out that little 10 millimeter bolt. Okay, and we're back. We're going to take this 10 millimeter bolt out here. Now, if it's really tight, don't force it and break it. I'm not going to take this one out because it's going to break. I can feel it trying to twist like it's going to snap. So I'm going to elect not to take out that sensor there. We're going to leave it right in there. Sometimes what happens, the reason I take it out is because sometimes when you try to pull the bearing out, it bangs around. I didn't want to damage it, but I'm going to do more damage than good by trying to remove it. So I'm going to leave it go. All right, then we take out this cotter pin right here. And then we're going to air gun this nut here right off. There we go. All right, cover your ears. I'm going to air gun this off. Okay, now if this is loose, I can see it's loose. If it didn't loosen up, you could tap on this nut now to actually make the axle slide in the bearing, but that's not the case here. It came right out without an issue. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to go in the back. Remember those bolts I showed you in the back there? We're going to take those 4 bolts out. Now, if you can get in there with an air gun, you're more than welcome to. If not, you're just going to break them loose with a regular ratchet. Once they break loose, it's not bad. Oops. Holy crap, I almost knocked you on the floor. You okay? All right. Okay. Yep, let me grab that. Sorry about that. Okay, once you got these bolts out, you can pretty much take them out by hand. They're really not tight. Once you break them loose, you can just turn them out of there, and we'll take all these bolts out. Don't lose them because you are going to need to reuse these again. Okay, now the bearing is loose, but it's actually, it's pretty rusty on there. So we're just going to, you can use either a slide hammer on it to get it off, or you can just pry it out a little bit then. Well, that phone's driving me crazy here today. Okay. All right, now we got the bearing out. Watch how your shield comes off too. Okay, we'll take this off here. All right, let me clean this up a little bit and then we'll come right back. Okay, I just want to mention before you take this bearing out, I did take that sensor off and relocate that off to the side because it's hooked in the back of the bearing over here, and I'll show you where it is. It actually goes through this little hole right here on the bearing, and what happens is that if you don't take that sensor off, when the bearing comes out, you're going to snap it off. So I also want to tell you this too, is make sure you marked, before you take it all apart, mark where it goes, because this hole has got to be up in this section over here to accommodate the new ABS sensor, or not the new, to reinstall the ABS sensor. So, all right, we're going to clean this up a little bit, and we'll start getting this back together. Okay, now that we have everything cleaned up, we're going to reinstall the bearing back onto the vehicle. Okay, now when you're ready to put it back together, we take our shield, we put the shield back on the way it came off, and then we just lift the bearing so that it lines up again. Turn our shield, and now we're going to catch all 4 of the bolts in there before we tighten anything down. We're just going to catch them loosely now. Okay, now that we have it all caught, all of them are caught, now we can go in there and we can tighten it in with the ratchet. And you're going to go around the whole thing and tighten it in a little on each one so that you pull it in nice and even. Okay, now you have them all snug down. Now you can tighten it up. All right, now our bearing is in. We're going to put that nut back on for the axle. Cover your ears, we're going to shoot this on. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to put that cotter pin back through there that we previously took out. We'll bend it over. Okay. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to reinstall our ABS sensor that we took out. And obviously it just goes back in the hole. And we can tighten up our screw. We're going to put a little bit of never seize on this because it was a little bit tight coming out. Okay. All right. Next thing we're going to do now, we're going to put our rotor back on here, and we'll get this thing wrapped up and get the brakes on it. Okay. We just slide our rotor back on here. I want to point this out. I cleaned this off already with brake cleaner, just so you know. All right. And what I normally do is screw a nut on here just to hold the rotor in place while you're working. It won't move now. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to put our brake pads back on. Okay. Now before we go any further, I just want to show you this here. We're going to lubricate these slide pins right here really well so that everything slides nice and freely. Make sure they go back in the correct locations. Okay. We are going to lubricate every place that the brake pad touches. We're going to put some grease on there to make everything slide nice and freely. Okay. Now we're going to reattach our mounting bracket back on the car. And we are going to lubricate these bolts because they were extremely rusty coming out. A little never seize goes a long way. Alright, now we can tighten these down, both tight. Alright, next thing we're going to do is we're going to put our brake pads in. Now remember, when you put the brake pads in, these clips have to be up on top over here. Like this one has got to be up on top. This clip here has got to be up on top because it has to go underneath that little tab right there to pull it back out. So let me do that. You see how it pulls it? Keeps it out, pulls it out a little bit. That's what you need it to do, so it doesn't have that constant drag on the rotor. All right, so we're just going to leave that right there for now, like that. We're going to put our outside brake pad on, the same exact thing. Hook your little tab underneath the piece where it belongs. And see how it pulls back out? That's what you need it to do. Now we're going to take our rotor, our caliper, and we're going to put our caliper back on, and that'll keep the brake pads from pulling back out. Be careful because it is a little bit of a tricky maneuver to do, but before you tighten everything up, make sure your clips didn't pop out. And we catch the bolts that hold the mounting bracket and the caliper. Before you tighten them, you get them both caught. Screw it in as far as you can by hand. Same thing on the top one. And then we can tighten it all up. Nice and tight. Nice and tight. That's it. All right, let me just get my gloves off. I'm going to bring you in. I'll show you what we did. Okay, so now what we did is we put our cotter pin back in here, tightened this down with the impact gun. We put our nuts in the back over here, tightened them all up, those 19 millimeters to hold the bearing in place. We tightened up our mounting bracket for the brake caliper hardware, the caliper mounting bracket. We put our ABS sensor back in where it belongs and snug that bolt down. We made sure our brake pads are in and the clips are hooked on the way they're supposed to be here and on the inside over here. That's it, we're all done. All right, so this side is all done. We're going to go around the other side now and we're going to do the brakes on the other side and then we're out the door. All right, any questions or comments or any advice needed, send me an email. I'll be more than happy to talk to anybody about anything. As always, thanks for watching. See you on the next one.